I think everybody here knows.
Well, you never know. When we do these, there's a lot of people that log in after these recordings and I load them into the back page. And then people go on and they might not know who you are. So why don't you introduce yourself?
All right. So my name's Pablo. I am a strength coach and nutritionist. I own Perseverance Strength and Conditioning. In terms of my credentials, I have my CSCS, which is from the NSCA. If you want to know what that is, you can go look it up. And in terms of nutrition, I have my PN, which is level 1, the Precision Nutrition Certification level 1. I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I've been doing jiu-jitsu I do martial arts for almost 20, and jiu-jitsu in one shape or another, so either gi or no gi or MMA for 16, 17 years.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. What we're going to talk about today is some basic guidelines on how to eat well, given that we're all stuck at home. Mm-hmm. And then I'll answer questions, but I'm more than happy to answer questions on how to eat specifically for a particular training style.
All right, so I want to go over the questions that other people had. That way we can, answer those questions, and then if anybody else has any more, then we'll answer them. Okay. So, first
just real
question.
Quick, before you get the question, I would suggest, just because I've been doing this a lot right now.
Yep.
I would suggest everybody except me turn off their video.
Okay.
The reason is it lowers the bandwidth. It frees up some bandwidth and makes it so that even when people have to ask questions or we need to talk, it doesn't interfere.
I can do that actually for everybody. Cool. Everybody has theirs off. Wow, that's because it's overloaded right now. Zoom is so overloaded.
Yeah, everybody in their mother
Marlene, I said hi. Tell your wife I said
hi. Charlie says hi.
Hi. Okay, excellent. Well, that was a trick that I learned then. Very cool.
Yeah, when I say on every day for at least 2.5 weeks now. So I think we want to start off just by saying Naati looks awesome in his picture. That is instead of his name. He looks like a superhero, but I'll just embarrass him later. It's fine.
He's gonna log out now because you said that.
No, he looks too good. You look great.
It's your moment. It's your moment. I just figured I just put that on there instead of like this I don't know, in between stage hairstyle I got going on right now.
Hey, look,
we all have it except for Pablo.
No, for once, you're the man.
For once, I'm the man with hair now because I could do my hair whenever I want.
Yeah, you look fresh and ready for every Zoom meeting. I look like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons every single time. Try to make myself more and more approachable as I talk to all my admins. And my students like, hey guys, no, I will not eat you. I'm fine. Things are fine at home. It's all good.
Right, no, I can't get to you.
Yeah.
Actually, before we go to questions, well, how do you want to handle this? We can do this one of two ways. We can just go through questions and anything we don't cover that I think is important, I can just go at the end. Or I can kind of go through a bunch of stuff and then see where the questions go after that.
Let's do the questions because I think a lot of people may have the same questions that are asked in there. And then if there's additional ones, they can ask them and then you can address them. But I think the ones that were asked are really good. I'm trying to find my headphones, but all right, guess I don't have any. Okay, so the first question was, Pablo, is there an easy way to work out your own macros or appropriate calorie intake?
Easy? No. However, there's two ways to go about it in general when it comes to nutrition. You can get really, really specific and get down into some nitty-gritty math, or you can learn some methods to approximate. I find it helpful to know a little bit of both and then choose in what direction. One of the mistakes I think a lot of people make is they try to change behavior totally as opposed to leveraging the current behavior they've got. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're a detail-oriented person, you're super organized. Maybe it would behoove you to figure out what the exact numbers are and try to attain those numbers. If that is not who you are, be honest with yourself. Don't do that and use some of the tricks to approximate. All right, so let's talk about what that is. From the nitty gritty, Protein intake depends a lot on muscle mass, how much you weigh in general, and how active you are. So to give you an idea, take a 200-pound man just because the numbers are easy. If that 200-pound man has a relatively low body fat, what I mean by that is anything under 18%, and they are decently active. So I'm not saying jiu-jitsu every day, but they're doing something physical every day, if not every day, most days. And physical doesn't necessarily mean exercise. It means maybe you're a police officer and you do a lot of walking, or you are a contractor and you do a lot of physical labor. You're moving is the point. You want to get about 0.75, so 75%, up to about 100%, maybe a little more than that. Of every pound you weigh, you want to take a gram of protein. So if you're a 200-pound man, you'd be taking in about 150 grams of protein on the low end, and up to 200 to a little over that on the higher end. That number can go up if your body fat's even lower and your activity level's even higher. Ranges can be as low as 50% for relatively low activity people. So people who just maybe you only train twice a week. The protein intake can go down quite a bit, and it can go up as high as 1.25, so 125%. So a 200-pound person would be taking in roughly 250 grams of protein. That is, you have to be really crazy training. We're talking you're a bigger guy, and you're training every single day, once or twice a day. Those are relatively that's an outlier. Okay. If you are not that specific, if you don't want to get down to the nitty gritty, the easiest way, in my opinion, is to use your hands, right? So protein is generally your palm, right? It's a quick and dirty way. If you're a bigger person, you have a bigger hand. If you're a smaller person, you have a smaller hand. And one serving, okay, of protein is generally your hand, and approximately in the same terms in thickness, approximately. What I find is the easiest thing to do for somebody is to take a leaner cut of protein. So like a low fat sirloin or a tenderloin or a chicken breast. And we could talk about if you don't eat meat, that's totally a viable option. And you take it, you figure out, okay, this is how big that piece is, and then weigh it. All right. And then just once, only once, and never do this again, figure out how many grams of protein are in it. So I know that my hand is about 6 ounces. Okay. 6 ounces is about 40 something grams of protein. Okay. So when I look at something on the plate, if it's 6 ounces, and this is important, by the way, if you're going to weigh it raw or cooked, I would suggest weighing it cooked because you're going to see cooked food more often. Then, okay, 6 ounces is roughly that much protein. Every time I eat something, I'm taking in between 35 and 45 grams of protein. And then I know that if I need to get to 170, which is my goal, I got to get probably something like 1.5 servings every time I eat. Now I'm not worried about numbers. I'm going to be somewhere in the range that I need to be. So you only do this once, okay? If you do want to get really specific and weigh it every time, go for it. But be that kind of person already, right? Be somebody who's really detail-oriented, really OCD about stuff. If you've got that going for you, use it. If that's not who you are, don't go down that path because you'll last a week to 2 weeks and then say screw it and not pay attention to it anymore.
I have a question about now I realize this, and I think you know this too. When we talk about protein sources, Pablo, I have peanut butter in front of me here that I ate with an apple. Does peanuts count as a protein source towards my grams of protein that I need per day?
So I'm going to say yes, but I wouldn't consider it a serving of protein. So what I mean by that is this. When you're figuring out your servings, if you're going to do the hand method, don't consider the peanut butter a protein source, only because it has way more fat than it does protein, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we want to get into the science, 1 gram of protein has about 4 calories. My dog is driving me crazy. The puppy in the house all day is absolutely everywhere. All right, sorry. 1 gram of protein is, are we going to stop? Okay, sorry. So 1 gram of protein is approximately 4 calories, right? Where 1 gram of fat is approximately 9 calories. So the same physical amount, you get more than double the number of calories. So it's just denser. So even if it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so like peanut butter isn't even a 1-to-1 ratio, by the way. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter has like 16 grams of fat and only, I think, like 6 or 7 grams of protein. It's not that the 6 and 7 don't count, but if you're not going to count every single gram, it's better to allow those proteins that kind of just put you a little higher than you otherwise would be than to consider that a protein source from a portioning standpoint.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's go to the next question. Let me log on here, make sure that I have the right one.
Oh, well, that's
All
only
right.
the protein, by the way. If it's a macro, if you're figuring out macros, sorry, it's a good point real quick. If you're figuring out macros, your carbs are going to be totally dependent on your energy level and what your goals are. If you're trying to lower body fat, you're going to want your carbs much lower, right? And we'll talk, I'm not giving you specifics yet because at the end, if nobody asks, I'll give you 2 quick measurements that you can use to figure out carbohydrates.
Okay, great.
And same thing with fats. Your fats will determine, again, how much energy you have and what you're trying to accomplish. So again, and we'll cover all that at the end if nobody ends up asking.
Cool. I was curious about that too. I'm glad that you covered that. So you answered my question, how much you should be eating. And then the other question was, how do you figure out your own macros and appropriate calorie intake? Did we answer that there too or no?
Not directly, but one will figure out the other, right? So
Okay.
Macros will generally equate to calories. Okay. So if you're hitting the appropriate number of proteins in a day, which by the way doesn't really change much unless your activity changes a lot. If you're hitting your protein and then you're hitting your, and you need to know what you want to do from a gain weight or lose weight standpoint. Generally speaking, if you're taking protein in and that's, let's say 200, again, to make it easy. If I want to gain weight, I'm probably going to have to take in more than 200 grams of carbs. If I want to lose weight, I'm probably going to have to be way below 200 grams of carbs. If I want to maintain weight, I'm going to be somewhere in that 200 range. This is actually easier than it sounds because you don't necessarily have to count everything. Carbohydrates basically break into 2 groups when it comes to measurements with your hands. They're either starches, and so we're talking like grains, pasta, potatoes, and that's going to be from your knuckles to your tip of your finger, right? Your longest finger, right? That's about a serving. In terms of density, like how thick, so if this is the plate, how high off you get, just be realistic. Don't mound it up and you'll be fine, all right? Where things like fruit, all right, that's going to be a fist, all right? Has a lot to do with the fact that fruits are just not as densely caloric as a grain, so you're going to have less of it. And again, if you want to figure out a 1-to-1, well, a portion to a portion, right? If this is my protein and I want to go 1-to-1, well, if I eat this much protein, I eat that much carbohydrate and I've got my 1-to-1. If I want to go, for every 1 gram of this, I want to do half a gram of that. Well, if this is full, I do just half that as a portion. And I just figure it out that way. And don't worry about being super specific. As long as you're in the ballpark, you'll get in the direction you want to get to. Again, unless you have that kind of personality.
Cool. I have some other questions here. Let me get those. So Ryan asked, what kind of diets or nutrition would you recommend for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, think of it like weight training at a cardio pace, right? It's definitely resistance training. The other person's not just letting you choke them. It's cardio, and I don't like that term cardio, by the way. I like the term work capacity better, but let's just use cardio to make everybody easy. It is cardio because we all know at the end of a roll, you're smoked. I think the answer to that, again, depends on what your goals are. If you're looking to lose weight, right, specifically body fat, I would probably go with a 1-to-1 ratio, if not a little bit lower. And what I mean by that is for every serving of protein, I would do less than a full serving of my carbohydrates, right? That'll keep me at a lower number and help me lose body fat. If I'm trying to gain weight or I'm real thin and I don't want to lose weight, which is also a possibility for some people, then you're going to want to do more than a 1-to-1 ratio. So if this is the protein I'm taking in and that's the carbs I'm taking in, maybe I do this plus a half. And again, you look at the dish and just use your hand, stare at the thing, use your hand. Okay, that's one, that's another. All right, I need a little bit more. That's a half. I got it. And you don't have to do it forever. Most people that I teach this to, they've got it down to where they don't have to measure using their hand after a couple of weeks. And then they just know, oh, by eye, that's a palm, right? That's the right servings of carbohydrates. Okay, that's a fist worth of fruit. All right, that's about a thumb's worth of fat. And they can start figuring it out from there. But just get real diligent for a week or two, and then you'll kind of catch an eye for it.
Would you say that the same is true for if they're doing kickboxing too? If one is
no different.
It's the same thing.
Okay. I mean, you can get really, really down to the science, and there is a difference. But for most people, for what they're trying to do, it's not a significant enough difference where you need to start going down that route. One thing that is really important with nutrition, everybody tries to start doing the higher order stuff first, and that's the mistake. Okay, and what do I mean by the higher order stuff? You'll read, and I'm going to use a couple of technical terms, and then we can define them. But you want to have monosaccharides post exertion because it's better for filling up glycogen storages in muscle belly. Basically, that's saying you want to take simple, in quotation, simple sugars after you work out because you uptake it faster. That's absolutely true, okay? But if at the end of the day, you're not taking in enough protein, enough food, or enough carbs, does it really matter? Not really. That stuff only matters when we're starting to try to squeeze the last little bit of something out of our nutrition. Handle the basics first, and then worry about the rest.
All right,
does that
cool.
Make sense?
Yeah, of course. That means, have you ever heard I really like this analogy. Have you ever heard of this analogy or this saying? It's called the sidewalk rider.
No.
Okay, so my dad told me about it a really, really, really long time ago, about in the Harley Davidson kind of community, where people would dress like they had a Harley Davidson, but they actually didn't have the motorcycle. So don't buy the helmet and the vest and the boots and the pants if you don't actually have the bike. So you're putting the cart before the horse. You need to have the bike first before
it's the same idea here. So I'll give
before you have all the technical stuff, right?
I'll give you something that's just the one that drives me the most crazy. Somebody tells me, I've got protein for post-workout. I've got protein before I go to sleep. I got different protein. It's that stuff's all 100% true. Certain proteins take longer to uptake, and they can be taken at night. Other proteins are faster to uptake. They should be taken after you're working out. But that's really specific stuff. Meanwhile, you ask them, well, how many portions of protein are you eating a day? And they couldn't tell you, right? Just eat enough protein in regular food. Just figure out what you're supposed to be eating on a regular breakfast, a regular lunch, a regular dinner. And then you can start tweaking and adding, I'm going to start doing a casein protein at night or whatever. Start with the basics and then work your way up. Don't start from the top, because even if you get that nailed, you're going to get very little out of it because you haven't handled the foundational stuff.
I think that's really good advice. All right, so the next question is, we hear so much about macros and what percentage should be fat, carb, or protein. Is there any good ratio to start with? And Pablo, when I hear this, I immediately go to, and I don't know if you put it like this or not, this reminds me of people who are so I'm a carnivore diet, or I'm a keto person, or I'm a paleo, or I'm this or that. Can you dive into that?
Sure. So I want to use a disclaimer on this. There's a very big difference, just like the higher order stuff. There's a very big difference between trying to start off and just figure out what you're eating, and then again going down the rabbit hole of what diet. And so what I mean by that is this: I don't really care what diet you do, vegan, carnivore, omnivore, pescatarian, zone. The simple fact that you're starting to pay attention to your food is the single most difficult step, right? If I could get anybody to do just one thing, and this is the only thing I could get them to do, right? And they're starting at zero, it would be plan what you're going to eat, regardless of what it is, every day before you eat it. And that doesn't mean literally right before you eat it. That means right now you could tell me what you're going to have tomorrow for breakfast, right? Right now you could tell me what you're going to have lunch tomorrow. And right now you're going to tell me what you're going to have for dinner tomorrow. If you can do that, you're beginning to pay attention to what you eat. You will start to make a lot of common sense decisions that will go a very long way in making you healthy and getting you to the optimal weight. That by itself, very rarely do you tell somebody something from a diet standpoint and they're like, oh my God, I've never heard of that. Or, oh my God, that's the first time. Everybody's basically heard it at this point. If you know what you're going to do ahead of time, you will have a very small chance of making a stupid mistake. And what do I mean by that? It's dinner time. You're starving because we're all working from home and nobody's taking the normal breaks they take. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I get in front of my face. All right. As opposed to if that happens, but I chose what I was going to eat for dinner before, I know that's right. I've got that steak. Like right now, I know for a fact I have a sirloin steak, not sirloin, a strip steak waiting for me for dinner. I've got that and I've got Brussels sprouts and I've got a little bit of white rice. And that's what I'm having for dinner. And I knew that yesterday. So even though I'm hungry, I know what I've got waiting for me, so I'll just wait for it, as opposed to having to make a decision right before I eat it and probably making the wrong one. Now, in terms of specific diets, I'm a personal, I ascribe to what's called the omnivore's diet. I think we're supposed to have carbohydrates, we're supposed to eat protein, and we're supposed to have veggies and a good amount of fat. In terms of percentages, the percentages that the science talks about starting with is 40, 30, 30. Okay. So 40% coming from, and this is from a caloric standpoint. So 40% of your calories coming from carbohydrates, 30% of your calories coming from protein, and 30% of your calories coming from fat. That means you'll take a lot less fat, because remember we talked about the grams and the calories per gram.
Right.
I usually start people there and say, okay, let's see how you feel, because there is a lot of biodiversity between people. So what does that mean? It means what I eat is going to have a different effect on me slightly than maybe what Charlie or Naati or anybody else eats.
Interesting.
Both because of genetics and also how much we do in a given day. So what I would say is start with a 40, 30, 30, and then listen to your body. And understand it takes about 2 weeks for your body to start to really acclimate to a particular diet. So if after 2 weeks, and I'm going to get gross for just 1 second, but you're, going to the bathroom like way more often after 2 weeks, probably something's wrong. Or not at all, also probably something wrong. And make sure you're drinking water and doing all the things that we know. If you do that and you're having some kind of discomfort from a physical standpoint from the food, something's wrong. And then you need to tweak it. It's very rarely the protein, assuming you're taking in that, we talked about how much. It's usually somewhere in the carbs and the fats. And then paying attention to the obvious stuff. Like if I told you what's better for you, a burger from McDonald's or a, organic grass-fed sirloin it's obvious, right? It's a fairly common sense thing. As long as you follow some common sense rules and plan ahead of time, you're going to make 85% of the decisions you're supposed to be making. And that last 15 then comes into how much protein, how much carbs, how much fat, how many veggies, and of what.
Man, that's really good. And that makes a lot of sense, because I think that we get off on these and I've been guilty of it before, a while ago. And I'm sure we all have, where, we hear the thing on the podcast or this next thing, or this person's doing that. And sometimes, not always, they have an agenda that they're trying to sell behind what they're trying to push, meaning a supplement or something to say,
a diet.
You need this. Right.
And it's also, food is really personal, right? Food is literally what you are. You are what you eat. And I don't just mean that from a physiological level, which is true too. Cells die, cells need to be replaced. The only thing coming in is food. So you're literally what you eat on a cellular level, but also on every other level, on a cultural level, right? What you eat talks about who you are, where you come from, all those things. So when people talk about, I do this, they're trying to tell you something about them. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you have to take that for what it is. Like I said before, try to make sure you're paying attention to what you're eating ahead of time. And that is that's the hardest part, by far, the hardest part. But once you get good at that, then you can start tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and seeing what you like. And like you said with the diets, I've done every stupid diet you can think of. I did paleo when that was the thing. I did keto when that was the thing. I did, what's it called? I did zone before I did both of those because I wanted to know if it worked. I've come to the point realizing now that I just obey what the really basic science says, and I just stay with that, and I don't do the other things. But I was better off doing those than not doing anything, right? By far. Because when I just ate whatever I wanted, which was not, a fairly long time ago, but when I ate whatever's in front of me, I started getting unhealthy. And even though the diets didn't follow the perfect science, I felt much better. Okay. And then suddenly, as I started to learn more, then it became, all right, I need to eat a little bit more of this. I need to eat a little bit more of that. And the common sense stuff started to make sense more. Don't eat processed foods. Don't have processed sugar. Try to make sure I eat a lot of protein. Push veggies as much as possible. Drink a lot of water.
Cool. We don't have any more questions in here, but I think I had one. What was the one that I had asked? We figured out how much protein you eat. Here's one I think that's important. How do we know how much water or liquids we should be drinking per day?
Yeah. So there is such a thing as too much of everything. However, to drink too much water, you got to drink a lot of water, right? Like stupid amounts of water. So there's always the story of that guy who died from drinking too much water because, he literally, there's a word for it. I can't remember what it is. Push water, right? Mm-hmm. When in doubt, drink water. And then when you're not sure, drink water again. Anything else that you drink it for a purpose. So have coffee. Look, I love coffee. I could literally drink coffee all day. That being said, it's a diuretic and it's going to dehydrate you if you're not careful. So drink water. One of the little trick kind of hacky things, but there's a little bit of science behind it. First thing you do when you wake up in the morning, have a big old glass or a pint of water. I want to say there's a good chance nobody here is drinking too much water.
I'm not drinking enough some days.
No, I definitely don't drink enough.
I feel like I need to drink way more. Some days I'll drink like 30 ounces and I'll be like, well, I'm so thirsty. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't drink water since this morning, so it is definitely something I need to be better at. At one point I was really, really good at drinking a lot of water. So I do need to get back on that.
So I want to give people things like takeaways, right?
Yeah, sure.
I want to break the takeaways into 3 parts. And these are all things, if you haven't taken notes, which I obviously don't expect any of you to, this would be the thing that you can write down, right? And then I'll tell you one thing at the end, give you guys a little bit of a pitch.
Perfect. Let's do it.
So the first rule is what I call the granny rule, right? Chances are if your grandma told you to do it, it's probably right. All right. And what does that mean? That means drink water, eat your veggies, right? Make sure you don't overeat. Make sure that you have a little bit, eat your protein, eat your pasta, eat your rice, right? Have the fruit, don't have the cookies. Okay. These rules are things that most people just inherently understand. They know they're not supposed to be having ice cream for lunch, right? They know they shouldn't be having a cookie before they eat dinner. We all know it, and yet we do it anyway. All right. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You can talk about behavior and emotional eating, all true. But if we're talking about takeaways, your first takeaway should be the common sense rules or the granny rules. If it makes sense, such as eating veggies, drinking water, right, then do it. Don't just nod your head and be like, I know that. Do it. Like another obvious one, stop eating when you're not hungry anymore. Okay. Don't stuff yourself. We know this and we do it anyway. So begin to try to follow the basic stuff we all already know. All right. So that's the first rule. The second rule is going to be the measurement stuff. Depending on how important this is to you, you can take one of 2 steps. If this is something you've always kind of had a handle on and you just want to kind of tighten it up because we're stuck in the house, remember the hand rule, palm of protein, right? Starchy carbs, fruits, fats, all the veggies you want, every meal, right? Every meal. Okay. So that's an easy one if you're not really looking to go nuts. If you really want to make this a big difference, and this is something you've always had problems with, you got to treat it like you would treat any other problem. And what I mean by that is you need to take it really seriously and learn what you're supposed to be doing. So this is the process that if somebody works with me and they're really serious about it, this is how I put them through it. First, figure out about how many grams of protein you need to be taking in, how many grams of carbohydrates, and how many grams of fat. And we could do that together, or like I said, use your weight to figure out the protein and then what you want to accomplish to figure out the carbohydrates and the fat, using the 40, 30, 30 percentages as a way to start. Once you know that, buy some of the food that you like to eat and cook and start measuring against your hand and figuring out every time I go to Joe's Pizzeria and I get the chicken parm, okay, there's about this much chicken in it, or there's about 2 pounds of chicken in it, or there's really only a half a pound of chicken. And then figure out how much fat. If you have to go online, do a little bit of research, do it. If it's important to you, right, get a really good idea of how many portions of what is in the foods you already eat all the time. Okay? Then you have a much better chance to do what the last rule is, which is plan everything a day in advance, at least. Okay? Do not let decisions about food be made right before you eat it. Decisions about food need to be made well in advance, or you're going to eat whatever is in front of you. Nobody in the planet says no to ice cream and cookies if they're starving, and the thing that is right in front of them is ice cream and cookies, right? It's much easier to say no to the ice cream and cookies when you know you've got a steak waiting for you or chicken waiting for you, right? Or something else. That's right. This is 20 more minutes. I've got this thing coming in. I'm going to eat that. That makes it much, much easier. Cool?
Yeah,
So the 3 takeaways. Common sense, right? Take it seriously and know what you're eating. Really measure stuff out. You don't have to do it forever. Do it for a week, right? Just 1 week. And really bear down for a week and get a much better sense of what it is that you're eating. And then lastly, plan ahead of time.
Cool. Anything else that
the pitch.
people should
So
know?
I put some stuff online. So my company is putting out free programming. I repeat, free programming. This will not cost anybody anything. And the reason we're doing this is this is unprecedented. I know people keep saying that, but literally you can't talk to anybody right now and say, oh, what was this like when you lived through this X number of years ago? The last 2-3 generations didn't live through anything like this, where the entire country completely shut down like this. So if there's ever a time for people to kind of bear together and do what's right and make decisions based on the group and not necessarily the individual, it's now. So my company's version of that is we are going to be putting out a version of something that we were planning on putting out in the summer that was going to cost money. I say a version of something because it's not 100% ready. We put out the version we had because people were asking, and we know people need this. So the programming is called the Quarantine Club. I know there's on the Budo site, there's on their Facebook, there's a link on my personal Facebook, there's a link on my business Facebook. If you don't have access to any of that, together at psc.com, .fit. So together at psc.fit. If you email that, you'll get emailed an invitation. There's no credit card. It's not this one of those things where it's free for now and then you put a credit card and you have to cancel. None of that, right? You just sign up, you get part of the community, and you have access to all of it completely free until the end of May. I don't care when the government opens us up, unless it's after that. If the government doesn't open us till after May, then also good. But up until the end of May, it'll be completely free. It includes a mindset component where you can watch a video and fill out a worksheet and get a feel for some mindset stuff that you can use for yourself. There's a nutrition video and a component where you'll have an opportunity to kind of have access to some of the stuff I just said and some other stuff. You'll have access to that stuff for the entirety of that you're a member. And then I'm putting out 3 workout videos every single day. The workout videos, it's the same workout. Each video is a different level of the workout. Level 1 is for those of us who have been sedentary for a while and have decided they want to start working out. Level 2 is for people who have been working out and had to stop because, we're stuck at home. And level 3 is for those of us who, feel like we're going to be superheroes and want to push real, real hard. All the programming is my type of programming. I wrote it all. So if for those of you who haven't worked with me before, it's meant to help you move well and get you fit, right? And there's a lot of people on there who are going to be there supporting each other and posting stuff and getting a chance to kind of, help everybody get through this.
Is this already pre-recorded stuff?
All this stuff is pre-recorded, so you have access to all of it whenever.
Cool.
So if you don't feel like doing the day workout I released, you could do one of the prior day workouts. If you want to
Awesome.
rewatch the video on mindset or the video on food, you could do that too.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to – well, let me ask, does anybody have any more questions? You guys can put them in the chat. If not, thank you so much for your time and being here. And if you have anything else to add, please let me know.
If you guys have questions, right, I'm on Facebook all the time now, whether I like it or not, because now I've got actual business that requires me to be on it. So you guys can either send it to me through Facebook. You can text it to me if you have my number. And if you guys want to do anything outside of the group or do stuff one-on-one, you let me know, and I'm available for that too.
Awesome, man. Dude, thank you so much.
No, thank you guys.
All right, brother. Peace.